do
This
have
conference will now be recorded.
Perfect. We're right on time. So we are just handy to 7 o'clock, and I'm going to call this meeting to order of Committee of the Whole. I'm going to ask at this time if Council has any additions to the agenda this evening. Councillor McIver?
Yeah.
No, I'm good, Your Worship.
Okay, Councillor McDougall?
Yes, Your Worship. I'd like to add under the CAO reports under bylaws and policies. I just like to add policies, please.
Sure. So you just want to ask about policies under that item. Sure. Okay, so we will add that. Any other additions this evening? Councillor Aucoin?
Nothing here, no.
Okay, perfect. I would ask for a motion to approve the agenda with the one amendment that we will add a question or a comment under bylaws and policies under our CAO reports.
I'll move to approve.
Okay, so Councillor McIver, seconded by Councillor Aucoin. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Contrary minded? Okay, the agenda is approved as amended. Under presentations, we have our first presentation is for Raising the Villages, and we have Jim Mustard with us this evening. Welcome, Jim. We will hand the floor over to you for your presentation. And when your presentation concludes, I'm sure Council will have some questions and comments. Thanks for coming.
Perfect. Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Council and staff for the opportunity. So how do I change the slides? Do I control that, Melissa?
No, I'll change the slides for you, Jim. It's Terry. I'll change the slides. If you don't mind.
Okay, Terry. Very cool. Okay, good. All right, we'll go to the. No, I really appreciate this, and I'll do my 15-minute best because I really respect and understand the after being on council for 10 years, the importance of being brief to the point and respecting the amount of work council has to do every day, day in, day out to help shape their community's future and take care of the present. So thank you again. So I'm just going to do a quick overview on something that might be new to some on council, but this is called Raising the Villages, Malyomi Jit Mijiwashik, which translates into Gathering for Our Children. Next slide. And recognizing that we are on the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq, and through Raising the Villages, Malyomi Jit Mijiwashik, we are making an effort to weave back together our lives from our infants to our elders and from across all cultures to deepen our respect and understanding for each other. A little bit about the history of Raising the Villages. You can go to the next slide, Terry. The 2015-2016 is when the Ivany Commission released its report and really took a hard look at the economy in Nova Scotia and what was going to change the dynamic in Nova Scotia, that we were in a population decline, our revenues are down in terms of businesses, and they really took a deep dive into it, but then they handed it off to the One Nova Scotia Coalition, which was 15 members on the coalition, a lot from business, but the 3 leaders of the political parties. And they looked at all the evidence, took a full year, and they came out with the earlier starting strong as the #1 priority. So having that election in 2016, I got reelected, and we said, well, why don't we take a look, because they put that out there. What does that really mean for our region? So we did a quick gathering of everyone in 2017, all the leaders. It was in the Shannon studio. And we asked, is this the time to take a look at launching something really important, like how our children are doing in the community? And we all said yes, we agreed that was the thing to do. So we just informally located the efforts in Inverness County in terms of what funding we needed. And we looked at what's working for families with young children and what more was needed. Coming out of that in 2018, after that year of research, we really saw that the early years was something about 4 basic things. We're going to talk about hubs. We're going to talk about this reconciliation. We're going to talk about the active communication and networking that needs to happen. And then that communities need to be the drivers of what goes on. In 2019, we held celebrations for our youngest citizens across the region. In Port Hawkesbury, there's been one every year, I believe, which is a time to bring their youngest citizens together with the community and really bring them together, celebrate them with T-shirts and certificate to just sort of start that process going. And then in 2020, my last year on council, I looked at forming a regional early years coalition that would include a broader sector than just the people who serve children and families, but would include the business community, would include some of the other organizations that don't see themselves in that. But I didn't get elected in 2020. So now I am moving the Raising the Villages into a not-for-profit cooperative, and we'll talk about that in a bit. Okay, next slide. So why the early years is so important? Well, the research for over 20 years, the evidence is so clear that the early year starts early, before pre-primary, before childcare, and it sets the life course trajectories for our health, physical, mental learning, and behavior. Next slide, Terry. And you'll see in this next slide, there it goes, that all of the major developmental milestones of the brain's wiring occur before pre-primary at 3.5. So all the senses, emotional control, symbol, peers, language. It doesn't mean you've got all your language skills, but the wiring for language is done before 3.5. What does that mean? What does that mean? It means that there's a lot going on between that mother and that family in that home life that's so important about wiring it up for success in the childcare, success in the pre-primary, and that it's very hard to catch up later on. Next slide, Terry. Because we know, and this is evidence-based, that the health imperative, that the problems associated with challenging early life, and it's not abuse, it's mostly neglect. It's mostly replacing the human-to-human contact that grandma used to offer and the big extended family used to offer in home, replacing that with sometimes TV screens or other things that really don't engage the whole brain in the way that families traditionally used to with their younger citizens. And that first decade will show up at the school door with mental health anxieties. You can ask any primary teacher of what's going on. You can have physical aspects of asthma, allergies. ADHD shows up. In the second decade, you'll find that people are not doing well in school. Teen pregnancies show up, obesity, and third and fourth and fifth and sixth decades, you'll find health effects. The point being, it's a cascading effect and it starts early. And this is the point of why we talk about the early years does set trajectories. It doesn't show up when you're 6 months old that you got ADHD, but when some of the things that are complicating the lives of parents and families, they can be problematic and they have trajectories that are set early. Next slide. Now the money game, this is the one that should affect everyone. This is a Nobel economist from Chicago who was asked to look at where's the biggest investment we make for population to have competent societies, societies that can be civic, add to the community, have a good job, take care of their families, volunteer. And so he looked at universities, looked at school age, and when he looked at the numbers and where the biggest investment was, it was before that child reached pre-primary. And the difference is in that first year, it's $8 to 1. And it quickly declines until at the age you enter school, you're getting less than $1 back for every dollar you invest. This is the way we talk about investment. It's not a cost to our society, create competent societies. It's the investment that some societies like Sweden, Finland, Norway have really seen this over the decades that they've invested, and their societies have a higher level of functioning and less vulnerability. And right now, 1 in 3 of the children that enter school in the Strait region are vulnerable entering school. And it's not a blame of parents. I am not blaming parents. That was a community's responsibility since the beginning of time. Mothers always had others. This is a call to action for all of us. Next slide. I'm not queuing you up really well, Terry. I'm just kind of like, okay, next slide. Anyways, so this slide takes a look at from conception right through to what you'd see as school entry 4 or 5 years old. We have a number of really important milestones. The prenatal part, where physicians are working with you and you could use some other support. You know, you want to have enough to eat. You want to know you have a social relationships because your life's changing. From birth on, it just quickly changes that you have to do lactation consultants, look for a pediatrician. You want to have a grandparent around if you have them, because they extend so much of what's important for that baby's sense of belonging and connectivity. And we have all of these things separated in our community. They're not in the same place, if they're even there. And so you ask yourself, would you set a primary school up like this, where you put in one building across town, you go grade 1 over here, grade primary here, and grade 2 over there? Would you do that? Does that make sense? And it's not about schoolification, but families work really hard to be parents, and communities could do more to create that platform, that welcoming space that really does connect us from the beginning. Next slide. Thanks, Terry. I'm going extra fast so I can be on time. So the next one is the political imperative. And it came from, once again, you can go to the next slide. It was the Ivany Commission that says, we choose now. And it was a very in-depth look at what was needed. And the 7 priority areas were the early years starting strong. And so you looked into the actual action plan, and the next slide, Terry, shows that they were asking us at the government level, at the coalition level. They said, you know what you guys should do out there in the communities? You should look around what is really important for families. Find out what's working and what welcoming might mean to families with young children. And then do some pilots, build some pilots. And in those pilots, call on your First Nations neighbors, because they might be doing some things really well, like including elders in their community, recognizing the child as a citizen. Food security at the gatherings in First Nations is a norm. So we could take our kind of like the poetic side and build it together with that First Nations model. So they asked us to do this, but they didn't supply any resources for us to do this. They didn't say, okay, here's Port Hawkesbury, you guys want to do this, here's like some money to coordinate and get that going. Not a cent. We worked for 4 years to put this money together to be able to get to this point where we're ready to launch. The regional imperative is, we don't just want one center. We want to see the whole of Cape Breton being welcoming, from our First Nations community to our Acadian communities to our Gaelic communities, so that we can have demonstration pilots pop up one at a time that give us direction and help us learn, and we can support all the early childhood educators and people supporting that. And the long-term goal is have a network of welcoming coordinated spaces covering all of Western Cape Breton, Unama'ki, and beyond, and beyond. Next slide. So when I talked about the declaration, this declaration was signed by your Mayor Brenda, as well as the warden in Inverness County and warden in Victoria County, and the 2 chiefs. And it said that we're going to work to create welcoming community spaces that are intergenerational, a place to belong and be valued, universally accessible, everyone can get in there, having that extended loving lap, and culturally enriched. We're going to work at reconciliation and action. We're going to use the 3 tools of coordinating, networking, communicating, so it connects to what's out there. And we really make that idea that we need to work at that as our toolbox. And the final one is our communities are the key to making the decisions. Next slide. So that we can get to this idea that we have a welcoming space in the middle, we're going to reduce childhood poverty, we're universally accessible to everything we need and services in one place. We reduce mental health, crime, low literacy, addictions, unemployability upstream by wiring our youngest citizens for success. We connect to transit, local food, housing, and we strengthen culture and language, and we're business ready. Families feel supported and valued in our community. That's a game changer for us. If you don't come from here and you don't have grandma and grandpa around, what do you have? And we need to take this on. So here's the deal. Raising the Villages works with municipalities to get these centers going. We have the provincial and federal governments fund this. We're not doing it. We have them fund us. So the operations are funded by the feds and the province, but we may have to make a case for that. Next slide. And last week we had Mike Kellaway on with 2 provincial MLAs, and they see the point in this. So it's starting to change because of the pandemic. Social isolation's been a huge determinant in people's lives, really undermined people's confidence in where they can gather and what to do, and now is the time for something new. So we're looking at creating a multi-stakeholder co-op. Multi-stakeholder co-ops serve the needs of different stakeholder groups, such as employees, clients, and other interested individuals. So it's not a consumer, worker, or producer co-op. Next slide. And the values of a co-op are hugely important to what we're doing, because it really, the values about education, training, information, this is the learning journey that we're on to create this. It's about cooperation, which is our legacy here in Cape Breton and Noonamongi. That's how we got here, is we cooperated with each other. So more of it will be helpful with our young citizens, and we care about our communities. So those key principles are what drive us to go to the co-op. And the last one here, Terry, well, not the last one, but the last one for the co-op. We have like 7 key objectives. And the first one is to raise awareness of the importance earlier. So thank you for listening to me tonight on that one. The second one is to help facilitate the development of welcoming community spaces and hubs with organizations. And we have an organization in Port Hawkesbury that's been working actively with us. So now's the time to ramp that up. And what that means is part of the community needs to be involved a little bit more, like maybe a town councillor. We'll find out about that, because the next slide says who needs to be involved. And I'd like to put out the challenge that everyone needs to be involved. Infants to elders, elected officials to government staff, like NGOs to for-profits, service providers to businesses, that we're creating a co-op that everyone can join. And the message is our children are important, our families are important, and our connection to them and what we need to do for them is important. So that's what we're going for right now. It just makes a seamless community so we can connect to childcare, connect to the pre-primary, and know that our families are connecting to what they need from the beginning. And the last slide just shows the support and sponsorship over the years, which has been vast. And I have to thank Port Hawkesbury and the town and the council in the past for offering support. That's the presentation. Not bad, eh? Under 15.
That was impressive, Jim. That's great. So thank you.
So I did practice a bit.
Don't go anywhere, because we want to definitely open up the floor for questions or comments from council. But thank you very much for your presentation, and I can definitely attest to all the hard work that's gone on over the past 4 to I think 6 years even, Jim. Longer for you.
Yeah.
So with that, council, do you have any questions? Councillor O'Coin?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Your Worship. Just wondering, Jim, first of all, the presentation was great. A lot of information. It was quick, but I have it in front of me, so I'll go over it again. Just one thing that caught my interest was you say you're now changing to a not-for-profit. I'm just wondering what the reason for that is.
When I was municipal councillor, we had it within the municipality in Inverness, but I kind of feel that as an elected official, I had an inside kind of place to support the council's understanding and awareness of it. So it just makes sense now that we create a not-for-profit that has a bigger regional scope and can include more people actually in being active in that co-op. So I think if we can imagine 2 years down the road that the co-op had 5,000 members, that makes a political statement. If we go to the province and say, our co-op's got 5,000 members, we think it's time to support the initiative with long-term core funding for the pilot projects and ongoing creating those welcoming community spaces. So it was a series of meetings that really cemented the idea, because I didn't make the decision alone. We made the decision as a collective group of over 60 people.
Thank you very much.
And Councillor Coyne is newly elected to this council as well, Jim. But I guess just to give some context for Jason's benefit, some of the activities that Raising the Villages, the Port Hawkesbury chapter, participated in we had a family expo. What we had, I think it was well over 500 participants that included a lot of our stakeholders that provide services to families. Most of the time, they're free services to families, and we connected families and their children and extended families from all throughout Port Hawkesbury and surrounding Strait region. And it was it was a way to connect, because a lot of the people that came to this expo had no idea that there were some of these supports and services even available in our community. So you were able to bridge the gap of what we have and what people can access. And this simply, there are families that just aren't aware. It was also not, and we've also had welcoming our youngest citizen events where we had people from the community, families with young children, get into a space to support each other and make connections. Port Hawkesbury can be a very transient town, so it's hard for new families that are coming in to make those connections with citizens and become engaged, and kind of gets back to that whole, it takes a village to raise a child, and it goes back to that concept. And just this past fall, our Raising the Villages chapter came up with a COVID-friendly kind of Halloween event that brought the community together as well. So these are some of the kind of activities that we've been kind of doing on the side of our desk in a volunteer way. Any other questions or comments from Deputy Mayor McCrory? Do you have any comments?
Through you, Your Worship, to Jim. Jim, thank you for the presentation. I was curious as to the organization. You said there is an organization that you have been working with in Port Hawkesbury. What organization is that?
Mayor just spoke about it. That was the group of volunteers that helped to organize this. So it did include like public health, and included early intervention, but it included volunteers, retired people that really saw the importance of starting to grow awareness of what the early years was and how did our families really react to being brought together. And it really kind of started to create some momentum about the importance of creating opportunities for young families to come together, find out what services there. So it was mostly an ad hoc group. And what we're hoping to do now with the co-op is move to a more organized and structured way of supporting communities like Port Hawkesbury, Baddeck, in getting these pilots up and going. So right now there's just one staff that effectively works for Raising the Villages and does communication and network development. What we really hope down the road is to get a coordinator that can really work full-time with communities and volunteers to help move this into a more structured and successful model for Port Hawkesbury and region.
Just to add to that, Deputy Mayor, there are other chapters of Raising the Village in other communities. So Baddeck has one, I believe Shettycamp, Wagmatcook, Wacomo. So there are little kind of groups that work directly in communities, but then come together for the broader Raising the Villages to talk about, regional items and ways to work together.
Great, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Jim, for the presentation.
Any questions from Councilor?
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor.
Yes, Your Worship, through you. Jim, it's Huey here. I think you may have thought that was me asking that question, but it was Blaine. But anyway, I want to thank you.
Oh, yes.
I seen you make a presentation to the UNSM a number of years ago. It's been changed the name, obviously, now for NSFM or something. But anyway, and you made different presentations to the town over the years. I just want to congratulate you and thank you for your hard work. And I think that everybody that knows about the project, Raising the Villages, should support it. And I just wanted to put that plug in there for you. Thanks.
Councilor McIver?
Thank you, Huey. I appreciate that.
Yes, Your Worship, through you to Jim. Thank you, Jim, for the presentation. And I guess I've been around since the startup of this, and you put a tremendous pile of work into it. And it certainly shows. And I'm sure that the town of Port Hawkesbury will continue to support it. Thank you again.
So,
thank you, Councillor. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jim. Any follow-up questions from Council or comments? I guess just for clarification, Jim, I know that is there a financial request that you would like to put forward, or is it more of a moral support? I guess like how can our town support this initiative?
So Mayor, right now I did provide a budget to staff. What I'm going to do, I also promised them the financials from last year. They're still being done by Inverness County staff. Once those are together, I'll support a letter that you can look at with your budget and your audit committee. It's not an extreme amount, but it's just looking at, once again, I think the idea that we're making some contribution to this effort will go a long way for us. I would like to see the province step up and match us this year on the development of what we're doing, and then long term really start to support these pilots that I think Port Hawkesbury will be one of the ones that has an opportunity to be first out of the gate. Badek is also moving rather quickly too. So just to have a couple of models that we can learn from. So I think this is a win-win for all of us. We won't be asking for much. So moral support one, a small contribution two, and we'll be I'll be following up with those documents.
That sounds wonderful. We'll be looking forward to receiving those. And as you know, after being in municipal politics for 10 years, we're just getting ready to enter into our budget discussions. So you'll definitely take that to our budget discussions with us when that is made available to us. Thanks so much, Jim.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council and staff. Thank you again, and have a good night.
Yes, you too. Okay, so our second presentation this evening is from Bicycle Nova Scotia. I'd like to welcome Allison Carlisle. Hi, Allison. Thanks so much for joining us, and I'm going to hand things over to you for your presentation.
Hi, great. Thank you so much for having me, Ms. Mayor, and good evening to you and to Council. So my name is Allison Carlisle, and I am from Bicycle Nova Scotia, and I wanted to talk to you today about a project that we've been working on in Port Hawkesbury and active transportation in Port Hawkesbury. Next slide, please. So this is a map of the Blue Route, and it's one of our big projects at Bicycle Nova Scotia. It is a provincial-wide network of cycling in Nova Scotia. You can see the red routes are open Blue Route sections, and then the blue sections are proposed routes. And in total, this is over 3,000 kilometers of connected cycling network. If you look at Port Hawkesbury, and it's hard to see at this size, but there is a gray section where Port Hawkesbury is, and you can see it a bit easier, the big gray section in Halifax. So this map was created at a provincial level, and we're now working on the Hubs project in different municipalities across the province, Port Hawkesbury being one this year, to identify how the Blue Route is actually going to move through these municipalities. Next slide. So the overall goal of the Blue Route Hubs project is to identify how that Blue Route travels through Port Hawkesbury, but we also want to figure out how to best utilize this infrastructure to allow residents of Port Hawkesbury to use the network for everyday journeys through town. So connecting, thank you, connecting to local businesses and to other destinations in town. So you can see this is what we want to move to. So the first image there is a man in his prime. He's quite confident on a bicycle and he's in traffic. And I don't know about you, but that doesn't look very, like it feels very safe or very comfortable. That second image there, it feels like a nicer place to be, a bit more safe, a bit more comfortable for cyclists. And what we do in this approach for the Blue Route Hubs project is we want to focus on creating bicycle infrastructure that makes you feel like that second image. So there's two terms I'll use today. The first one, all ages and abilities. So we want to create infrastructure that is comfortable for people of all ages and abilities. And the second term is 880. Yeah, sorry. So infrastructure that is appropriate for people from the ages of 8 to 80. So you can see here, this pie chart, there's a tiny little sliver of 1%, and that's the strong and fearless rider. So in any population, we see this over and over again. You'll find 1% of the population is a strong and fearless rider, and that's that person in that first image. They're confident riding beside cars, no problem. But the larger section of this pie, the 60%, is interested but concerned riders. So there are people that would like to cycle, are interested in cycling, but they don't feel comfortable in that space. They need that kind of second image to feel comfortable. Next slide. Sorry, next slide, please. Perfect, thanks. So again, the approach for this project at Bicycle Nova Scotia is to move from thinking of a bicycle as a vehicle that moves through a space like a car, to thinking of a bicycle as a vulnerable road user. So the cyclist, the person on the bike, and how we can make sure that they feel safe, confident, and comfortable moving through spaces. Next slide, please. So again, these are 3 examples of that all ages and abilities facility, or 880 facilities. So the first, it's either low traffic and low speed places where it's a bit more comfortable to ride a bike with cars, or the second and third image there have some sort of physical separation for cyclists between cars and bicycles. Next slide, please. Oh, okay, sure. So we want to create bicycle infrastructure that makes people feel comfortable and safe. So I could talk all day about the benefits of enabling cycling. There's health benefits, environmental benefits, and economic benefits. Next slide, please. So some of the economic benefits at a municipal level are the savings, potential savings to the road maintenance budget. So if we create an environment where those 60% of people that want to bicycle are able to make their shorter everyday journeys by bike, then that's saving a lot of wear and tear on roads, and that can really improve the quality of roads and also potentially save that line item, which I know can be a big one on municipal budgets for road maintenance. Next slide, please. The other economic benefit about creating safe cycling infrastructure in Port Hawkesbury would be the potential of Port Hawkesbury to act as a hub for cycle tourists. So the Blue Route is planned to go through Port Hawkesbury. We just need to figure out how. We also need to figure out how best to connect those potential tourists and cycle tourists to local businesses in Port Hawkesbury. Next slide, please. So there is already a bit of a culture of cycling and walking in Port Hawkesbury, which is great. Walking routes, the awesome pump track. I love the raised crosswalk to identify that this is a place for people to walk. Next slide. So what we tried to do with the Blue Route Hubs project is build on that existing interest in active transportation, in walking and cycling in Port Hawkesbury. So there are 3 stages to the Blue Route Hubs project. And you can see throughout, we try and use that all ages and abilities lens. So right now we've completed stage 1 and we've completed stage 2, our report for stage 2, and we will be heading into stage 3. Next slide, please. So we did some analysis for stage 1. This is some maps to kind of pull together some destination information. We looked at the hills in Port Hawkesbury. I know that's a big thing. Pitt Street particularly is quite a big hill. So we used that information and pulled it together. Next slide, please. We also had some public engagement sessions. So we had an in-person event, where people came together in Port Hawkesbury to discuss where they would like to see cycling infrastructure. And we had a survey as well to, again, try and capture that information. Next slide. Oh, thank you. So this is just an image from, sorry, back to that. Yeah, just the next one there. Yeah, thanks. So that's just showing some of the information that we pulled from that first survey. So where would people like to see bicycle-friendly infrastructure? You can see Granville Street was quite popular. Next slide. So after we completed that analysis and did that engagement, we came up with this initial proposed network. So the initial proposed network has 3 routes. The first route runs along Granville, up Sydney Road, and then on a path on Sydney Road there. Route 2 runs along Reeve Street up to Sydney Road. And then Route 3 connects from Sydney Road and Sydney Road and Queen Street and runs along up a little path along Paint Street and then back into Tamarack. Next slide. So that's the initial route. And after we proposed that initial route, we went back and did some public engagement. We did a survey which had 71 responses. So we asked for feedback on that proposed route. And we also asked some questions related to stage 2. So for stage 2 of the process, we wanted to review that initial network plan and determine which route to take to stage 3, which I will talk about in a moment. So next slide. On that survey, we found a few comments identifying Paint Street as an undesirable place for bicycle infrastructure. You can see dangerous route, heavy truck traffic. There wasn't really any community support for putting a bike route on that road. Next slide. So based on that engagement, we changed the route. So Route 3 now runs, Route 3, the green one, runs alongside Trunk 4 and then up McIntosh, and then it cuts in from the Walmart and then again cuts across Trunk 4 and continues out to the Tamarack Education Center. So with this slight change to those 2 routes, we now have access up to the school, which is great. But you can see it runs beside Trunk 4, but not on Trunk 4, because it gives us a good access to the destinations that people want to reach in those areas, but we can avoid that heavy traffic. So unlike Reeve Street, where there is a bit heavier traffic, but it connects to destinations. So that is our proposed route at the moment. Next slide. And then we also asked on that survey, we asked residents which of those 3 routes was the most important route to continue to stage 3 of this process. And you can see Route 1, Granville and Sydney Road was by far the most desirable route to move forward, with 46% of people identifying that route as a top priority. Next slide. This is just some analysis that we did, which also shows again that Route 1 is quite desirable to move on to stage 3 of the process. So for time, I'll skip that slide, but it's there for you to have a look if you're interested in how that decision was made. Next slide. Great, so we have stage 1 where we created a network plan, stage 2 where we select the next route, and then stage 3 is going to be concept design. So skip the next slide and we can go to that slide. So this is what stage 3 is going to look like. So we're going to create 3 concept designs, and you can see that image there is the concept design. I know Granville is a bit tighter, so probably it won't have two lanes going in each direction. But the idea for stage 3 is that we want to show how best to use the space available along Route 1, along Granville and along Sydney Road, to move people on bikes, people walking, and cars through that space. So we are going to come up with 2 to 3 options for that. Then we're going to come back for public engagement to understand what the residents of Port Hawkesbury like or don't like about the different options, and what the best layout really is to support the things that people in Port Hawkesbury want to do, and how best to use that space. All right, next slide. So that was a very, very quick kind of overview of the Blue Route Hubs project. I do want to open the floor for questions, and I also want to use this time to ask for comments specifically on the selection of Granville Street to move forward. That, based on public engagement and our analysis, that's the conclusion we've come up to, but but I'd love to hear your comments on that as well as community leaders.
Thanks so much, Allison, for your presentation. It was a great presentation and really great information for council. With that, I'd like to open up the floor for comments or questions from council. Who would like to go first? Councillor McIver?
Yes, Your Worship, through you. Allison, with the Granville Street route, is your plans to, I guess the sidewalk, is it to be redone as a multi-use sidewalk?
At the moment, we don't have any suggestions for what that's going to look like. We're in the process of coming up with 2 to 3 different options. So potentially a multi-use path, potentially having kind of a quiet ways street, so having slower cars and bicycles sharing the space with cars. Another potential option could be kind of a pop-up bike lane for the summer. I mean, at the moment, we aren't sure how that's going to look, but we're coming up with 2 to 3 options, and then we're going to present that back to the residents of Port Hawkesbury and different stakeholders to get feedback on what will work the best for the people who live there.
Okay, that's good, because Granville is narrow now without putting another lane in the traffic lane. And we found out that our new walkway, that the active transportation lane that we did just finish, it's received quite well with the residents, and it is off the highway. So any kind of a route like that, like, I support it as long as it's off the highway. So thank you.
Of course, thanks. Yeah, I assume that you're speaking about the one on Reeve Street?
Yes.
Actually, yes.
That worked very well.
Great, that's good to hear. Yeah, that is the kind of stuff we'll be looking at for sure.
Great, thank you for your presentation.
Thanks. Councillor Coyne. Thank you, Councillor McIver. Councillor Coyne.
Through your worship, Allison, thank you for the presentation. I'm looking at your maps here, and a lot of them seem pretty close to a project we just approved a couple of weeks ago for a new AT trail system in Port Hawkesbury. Wondering, is there an opportunity for us to work together with that and maybe join both projects together?
So we are absolutely working with Paula Davies, who's the Director of Recreation at Port Hawkesbury, and we are aware of the other work that's going on. For our purposes moving forward, we are specifically looking right now at that concept design aspect of this, and then we will make a proposal to the town of Port Hawkesbury on what infrastructure should go forward in that space.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coyne. Councillor McDougall.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Thanks, Allison, for your presentation. I I agree also with Granville Street. Would have to be some altercations, but for a number of reasons. One of the biggest ones being it's down by the waterfront, and it's good. But I have another question for you, Allison. I don't know if you can help us out or not, but I did add on the bylaws on later on the agenda, and one of the things I was going to add is active transportation policy. I'm wondering, the purpose would be to support and improve the active living and well-being of residents, visitors, and the environment by providing alternative to vehicular-based transportation. So that's something we could work around, and there's all kinds of guidelines and everything. I'm just wondering, a lot of communities have adopted policies. You're involved with the whole province. Does the province have any policies for active transportation?
The province doesn't really have any specific policies for active transportation at this time. We do work with the province to kind of push forward active transportation in different ways. And it's something that we are looking as well to increase our capacity in kind of the next few years to support with initiatives like this. So I certainly think that we can continue this conversation if you'd like. I'd be happy to have a call with you if you're interested.
Yeah, no, I was reading a lot of some of the other municipalities' policies, and I think it's a good idea to have a policy.
I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor McDougall. Deputy Mayor McCrory.
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. Sorry, just one sec. Yeah, through you, Your Worship, to Allison. Thank you as well for the presentation, Allison. Can you just review what the proposed route is in terms of route, the third route?
Absolutely. Yeah, perfect, thanks. So Route 3 comes across Queen Street and crosses Trunk 4 at the bottom there. And then it's gonna come up beside Trunk 4 on that path that's used right now that a lot of people kind of walk up along that hill. And then it's gonna continue down McIntosh. So it connects to the shopping areas there. And then at this time, we have it cutting around Walmart, recognizing at this time that that's not land that's owned by Port Hawkesbury, but we think that it is kind of worth pursuing, and worst case scenario, if it ends up going on the other side of Walmart, it's not that far out of the way. And then again, crossing at the top there, which I believe is Paint Street again on that side, crossing Trunk 4, and then heading out on Tamarack towards the Tamarack Education Center.
So Allison, if you could go back to the bottom of that the start, that's going across Nepean Street, is that correct?
Hold on, let me just pull it up. I believe it's Queen Street there.
Oh, that's Queen Street, yeah. And so the line then going north up toward Walmart, is that in behind Cardell Trailer Court?
On I believe it's right beside Trunk 4.
So it's running adjacent to Trunk 4?
Yes.
Right where the truck traffic is?
Not, I mean, we haven't worked out exactly the concept, but the idea would be that it is not with the truck traffic. And I mean, even if it, as we say, like, as I talked about at the beginning of the presentation, even if that's the thing that ends up making the most sense in terms of the land available, we would absolutely suggest barriers of some sort between the truck traffic and cyclists, because that's not a pleasant place for most people to cycle. And it doesn't encourage people of 8 years or 80 years old to cycle.
No. So basically, at the end of the day, what your report will serve as is a blueprint. Is that the idea?
Exactly. Obviously, it has the idea that this could be used to apply for provincial or federal funding as it comes up, identifying that this is the plan, so you could apply for different portions of it. But the other option being, as different sections of these roads come up for construction or municipal infrastructure improvements, consideration is given to this as an active transportation corridor.
Yep. Very good. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Any other comments or questions from council? Okay, so hearing none, we look forward to you returning, Allison, and giving us an update in terms of your community engagement and I guess where this blueprint ends up landing. But thank you so much for your time, and I'm sure we can get your contact information from Paula if any other questions arise in the next couple of days. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so that concludes our presentations for this evening, and we're going to move on now to council reports on assigned committees. So council, I did circulate prior to our in-camera meeting just a little committee of the whole report. So if council has any questions on any of those items, you're more than welcome to ask. So at this time, I'd ask council if they have any updates on any of their local or regional committees. Maybe I'll just go around. Councillor Aucoin, do you have any updates?
Through you, yes, Your Worship. We're still waiting on terms of reference, and then we'll be putting an ad out for the Parks and Recreation Committee. And that's the only one that I appear to be the champion on.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Aucoin. Deputy Mayor McQuarrie.
Yes, Your Worship. We did have a meeting of Street Area Transit last week. The Accessibility Committee met on Wednesday of last week. I was unable to attend that meeting. I had attended Cape Breton South Recruiting for Health. We have a library meeting coming up Thursday night.
Thank you. Councilman Kugel.
Yes, Your Worship, through you. I was at that SAT meeting also, and I was also at a police advisory meeting along with Councillor McIver and their financial director, Aaron McEachen. And there's a lot of things that we got to discuss about the policing. I don't know if Aaron can hear me or not, but there's a big, all the incidents and everything that I don't want to read them all off, but if Aaron has a copy, maybe she can send them to all council. It's stuff like how many assaults were taking place in Port Hawkesbury over the year, and how many are taking place this year as opposed to last year, and impaired driving cases and the numbers compared to this year and last year. We reviewed the terms of reference. We're going to do a code of conduct for the policing committee, and we're going to have an oath of office. We also have what we're doing now is they want to have 2 members from each council, voting members, the chief administrating officer or his or her alternative as a non-voting member on the committee, and they want to have 2 citizens at large. Oh, maybe I shouldn't say 2, but we should put out a proposal or request for citizens on that committee. I'm not sure if it's 1 or 2. We're going to discuss it more detail at our next meeting. I was asked by yourself and by a couple of other councillors to bring some issues up at the meeting. There was some different issues throughout Inverness County and the town of Mulgrave and Port Hawkesbury. Some of the issues that I brought up that they were going to look into was the speeding throughout the town. One of the councillors mentioned that to me, Cardale Trailer Court and different areas. They were mentioned up around Spruce Street there and different areas. The noise pollution by the cars with the straight pipes on them, or whatever you call them. You had a name for it, Your Worship. I don't know what you called it, but somebody, the noise pollution of those vehicles. The other thing we brought up were the Jake brakes. They did go away, and they seem to be coming back now, and we're going to watch that, especially on Reeve Street and over around Cardale Trailer Court. The other was we asked if who's responsible for crosswalks, and they said they would take a look at some of the incidents around crosswalks that we had mentioned. And other than that, I think as the town has to do is maybe put out a proposal for applications for memberships. They want to go with some citizens, and they wanted to know we may have to change our rotation, how they do it. They wanted to, I think Mark and Aaron were there if they have anything to add. I know I'm getting long-winded here. They wanted to go, most of them want to go for 4 years to keep the police committee together for 4 years. But I told them that would be a decision of council. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you for that update, Councillor McDougall. So I guess is there some action items that we're going to have to add maybe to our public meeting, or is that something that we'll need to add to our next committee of the whole?
I think it may be probably our next committee of the whole, and I guess the only thing is that we'll have to see how we go about getting citizens on the committee, and
Sure.
and the length of, and also the length of the term of the councillors.
Okay, so Councillor McIver and yourself are both on that committee?
That's correct, and the chief administrating officer or his or her designate.
Okay, Aaron. Okay, so maybe the three of you can kind of put together any action pieces, and we can bring those forward for discussion to committee of the whole. And any decisions or ratification that need to be required can go forward to the next public meeting after that point. If that does that sound like that can work, Councillor McDougall?
It does, Your Worship, and I see Erin's there. If she has anything to add, I would appreciate it.
Sure, go ahead, Erin. If you have anything to add.
No, I think that's Councillor McDougall summed things up. They did want to confirm the number of public members before we did the call. So that terms of reference is going to come back to this council once it's been reviewed by the committee. It's pretty preliminary right now. And I absolutely will circulate the occurrences or the report that was provided by Staff Sergeant there as per councillor's request.
That's fantastic. It would be, I think it'd be great for council to see what those stats look like in the comparison, especially. Councillor McDougall, just any council committee report?
Councillor McDougall just gave his report, Your Worship.
Okay, sorry about that. Councillor McIver.
Yes, Your Worship. Just to add to what Councillor McDougall was saying about the police advisory, this committee is going to change, I guess, from what it was to bring it more in line with the MGA, and there'll probably most likely be a representative from the province on the committee too. So our next meeting, I think, as Aaron said, we'll have a lot more information on how it was going to set up, and then maybe advertise for our residents from the town for 1 or 2 as needed. And also, we did meet the Landry Lake Water Utility. It was a brief meeting. It was mostly housekeeping and electing a chair, and everything else seems to be going well. That's it for me.
Thank you, Councillor McIver. So who is our chair for the water utility now?
That would be me.
Oh, is that why you weren't volunteering the information?
Yeah, I didn't want anybody
I see
to
how
know.
it is. That's fantastic. And I won't belabor our council reports by going over the written document that I did circulate to council, but if there's any further information any of council needs from me, if you need me to elaborate on any of those items, I'm happy to do so. So with that, we're going to move on to our CAO reports, and I'll hand things over to Terry for that.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we had three reports from the CAO reports. The first one is marketing, recreation, tourism, and culture. I'm going to hand that over to Paula.
Hi, good evening through you, Your Worship. I have my report to give you. I had that distributed. Thank you to Melissa. But I'd just like to highlight a couple of the events and activities that are going on. The first one is the signage, and as you're aware, we've done a lot of new signs in the town, but one of the ones that needed a little extra work was the pool sign, and for 40 years we haven't had a sign over the door where you go into the pool, so thought maybe this would be a good time to do it. And also the people coming up the hill of Reeve Street were having difficulty knowing when they turned left, so Vive Marketing has done two turning signs. One will be around the TD Bank and the other one will be on the corner of McSween and Macquarie to help people find their way. And as well, the event sign. Sadly, it's very empty of events for the last number of months. However, it's going to get a refresh and just in time for things getting better. And as soon as the weather clears, that will be installed. You're aware of the street area trails and the increase in foot traffic and skiers and snowshoers that we've had. So we've been working really hard to keep people apprised of the conditions, whether it's snow or ice or whether it's mucky or whatever. So we've been doing a lot of that on social media. And that looks like we landed on Mars in that picture there, but that was our first night hike that we had. And we had close to 20 people show up and we all had night lights on and we didn't even need snowshoes that evening. And we walked from Bagley Field out to Tech, and it was a full moon and it was absolutely great. So we hope to do another one of those in the next week. We've purchased through funding from a project, a trail groomer, and Larry has been out grooming the trails. And it'll take a little while for things to get packed down enough, but it makes a huge difference when you're out there. The trail expansion applications have opened up and we'll be working on that in the next little while. We have situated the route that we want to look at, which is the Maple Trail, which goes from the Fish Ladder Trail along the brook. So it'll be a nice addition to the trail system. Community outreach, just to let you know, we are working on our next community dinner. You remember last year, St. Joseph's Church had done it for us. And this year, or this time we asked St. Mark's to see if they would be interested in taking this on. And they will be handling that on March 11th from 3 to 6. Last time we were able to do 400 dinners and they're checking into capacity right now to see what can be done. The IIHF hockey, which has not been on the radar of a lot of people for the last little while, that's the women's IIHF hockey. I should be hearing by tomorrow what the word is on Hockey Canada's either go ahead or not. If it is a go ahead, they will present us with a plan, a COVID plan for the game. We'll review it and see whether or not it's in keeping with what we would have to have in place to have a safe event. So as you remember, it was Japan's women's team that was supposed to be in Port Hawkesbury for a training camp. Aquatics is busy right now. We were canceled today, however, which is weather related. And we have been one of the special projects over there is with the Women's Resource Center. We are doing a Learn to Swim program with them, which is great. Just as an update, there'll be a COVID pop-up testing center in the Bear Head this Saturday. If you know of anyone who wants to volunteer, we need 20 people, and you can sign up on the website that is listed there. We'll be pushing it as well as Health Nova Scotia or Nova Scotia Health. So that's absolutely great for the town of Port Hawkesbury to have that so close at hand. And as well on Saturday, we'll be having a Chris Tinsky exhibit. He's a photographer from Cape Breton. It's a lovely exhibit, and that'll be at 3 o'clock on this Saturday. And in closing, I just want to thank Allison, I don't know if she's still here or not, and Mayor and Council for listening to the presentation. It's been a few months of work and deliberation and community engagement, and it was great to see it up on the screen and this fully developed to this point. So thank you very much. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer. Thank you.
Thanks, Paula. Any questions for Paula? Councillor McDougall?
Yes, Paula, thanks through your worship. Thanks, Paula, for your report. I just want to mention that Dr. Stram did mention the pop-up clinic in Port Hawkesbury in his report today. So if we can get some volunteers like Paula asked for, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
It's great. Thank you.
Thanks for mentioning that, Councillor McDougall. I know I did have a question from a citizen about that today, particularly for folks who need transportation to get to any of the locations where vaccines are being given. So I was able to find out information that if folks are able to call 811, they will connect that person with free transportation to get to the locations to receive their vaccines, in case you want to pass that on to any citizens.
Yeah, your worship, maybe Paula can correct me, but I'm not sure it's vaccines. I think it's just testing, isn't it? I think it's just testing.
Just testing this weekend. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else have questions for Paula? Okay, thanks, Paula. Back over to you, Terry.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just going to hand it over to Erin right now for the finance report.
Thank you, Terry. Through you, Your Worship. Just a quick report for me tonight. So the audit planning has commenced. Grant Thornton completed their walkthroughs virtually this year and are going through kind of preliminary analytics on our financial statements. Once that's complete, we'll schedule an audit committee meeting with our audit committee. I just wanted to advise council on notification we received on the assessment for the RCMP attachment. So we receive a federal PILT, or a payment in lieu of taxes, for that property. And they have notified us that they're reviewing that assessment this year. So that could impact the PILT that we're able to receive on that property. And really there's we have no say in that process. It's just they're going through an assessment of that property independent of PVSC. And that could impact the taxes on that property. So we'll keep that in mind as we go through our budget process and see where that process is at that time. The joint IT project, we discussed this, I believe, at the last meeting with council. So we had an RFP that went out for consulting services for the towns of Port Hawkesbury, Antigonish, the counties of Antigonish, Victoria, and Inverness, who are working collaboratively on a potential IT project to kind of flesh out a collaborative IT shared service. So the consultant report will assist the town and council in budget deliberations, depending on where we want to move with that project, or if we want to move with that project. So we're looking at getting information and specifically costing and how the operation of this potential collaborative shared IT service would roll out. Those responses were due last Friday. We're meeting again on this upcoming Friday to review the responses and hopefully select a consultant to move that forward. And as Councillor McIver had stated, we had a Landry Lake board meeting virtually on February 4th. From the finance perspective, the audited financial statements were approved by that board and the auditor selected for the upcoming year. So important for that work to happen, or for that decision to be made, which happened at that meeting. So I'll take any questions if there are any.
Thanks, Erin. Any questions? Back over to you, Terry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Worship. I'll hand over to Jason to do the engineering and public works report.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. Provide you with an update on the engineering and public works department over the past number of weeks. Starting off, regrettably, we were not able to provide you with a traffic sign report, as the cloud software system was undergoing an update at the time when I was generating this information, and I believe it is still in that capacity. The water treatment plant tank recoating project, that project is complete, and some pictures were provided in your council package. Very happy with the outcome of this work, and pleased with the quality of the work and the cooperation from treatment plant staff and council, and we're confident that we've expanded the lifespan of that asset for many years, and a huge improvement. The CMMS project that is ongoing. We had another project meeting in mid-February. Things are chugging along as planned with that initiative, and we have site visits scheduled for early in March with our consultant to review all of our properties and gather operations and maintenance information from those facilities. We provided an update on staff training. So Public Works and Operations staff attended an online course today, myself included, which it was very beneficial and interesting, and fit well with our asset management project that we have on the go at the same time. This course provided continuing education credits for our staff to go towards their regulatory certifications, and it was very fitting because it gave staff a real good background knowledge base of really what we're trying to do with implementing asset management best practices for the town. So it's going to help in the long term. And also we have some staff attending a water distribution system pipe repair best practices seminar tomorrow and Thursday mornings. Solid waste program, Nicole's provided some information to update council on our diversion rates over the last number of collections. You'll see from the last collection reported, the trending lines way down. That was collection right after our massive snow event on February 8th, which resulted in a lot of people not putting waste out to the curb, including my family, which was expected from us. We had a lot of comments from folks that when they looked in their green bin, they seen that the green bin just wasn't nearly full to its capacity, so they felt they didn't need to put it out to the curb, and that's exactly how the process is supposed to work. Moving on, Nicole prepared some costing comparative information on the town's cost to dispose of waste at the Guysborough facility over the last few years. And this is kind of the proof is in the pudding of why we make these changes, and we are seeing an overall cost decrease for disposal of our waste streams, and we should be proud of that. So we are starting to see the fruits of why we made these changes. Also, Nicole provided some information on public outreach and business outreach initiatives that she's been working on, including curbside waste inspections, creating waste sorting videos, which went over really, really well on our social media streams. So she does a really nice job of that. We provided compostable bag information and clarification to residents through social media posts and posts on the website, where we were getting some questions from folks who felt that the message wasn't exactly clear. So we've taken steps to provide that information. And essentially, as long as the product has BPI certification on the packaging, it's good to go for the Guysborough facility and their composting stream. Nicole's been spending a lot of time getting out to businesses over the last number of weeks. Really, she's been getting out to several per week, making appointments, talking to the management teams at the local businesses, seeing how she can help them with transitioning to the current ways of sorting and working with their waste hauler. So a lot of positive feedback on that, and I'm sure they're very appreciative of the assistance. And also, we've been provided with some videos from high school students in grade 10, and we should be receiving some from some grade 12 high school students of ways to waste sorting videos and composting and recycling education videos completed by those students at SERC, mainly geared towards the younger audience, which is going to be a nice touch. And finally, in the council package, we provided a very detailed list of Public Works Department activity and a summary of upside condition and storm events, and a couple of topics of our toolbox talks covered over the last month. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Jason. Any questions for Jason at this time? Councillor Coyne first, and then okay, go ahead, Councillor Coyne.
Through you, Your Worship, to Jason. More of a statement than a question. With the big dumping of snow we had, I was really impressed with how early the Public Works Department was out. They had the streets looking good at 3 a.m., which was really nice. And even more so, once the storm was over, they were quick to get out and widen the intersections and push the banks back. And they're only a small crew of men working in that department, but I just want to again say they did a fantastic job of dealing with the amount of snow we had.
Thank you. I'll certainly pass that along. They are a dedicated bunch of hardworking guys out there for sure, and they certainly put a lot of time in to respond to that snow event. And it was by far our largest response of the year. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor McIver.
Yes, Your Worship, through you, Jason. On the organics sorting, has Nicole been talking with the apartment building owners and seeing how they're getting along?
I believe so, yes. she's she has been speaking with all of the apartment building owners over the last number of months. Now, as of late, within the last number of weeks since the previous committee of the whole period, I'm not 100% sure, but it's extremely common for business owners and apartment building owners and tenants to reach out to our solid waste information line, 625-7888. If anybody needs that number, and Nicole frequently responds to those sorts of inquiries.
No, that's great. It's just that we gave a 3-month extension to commercial to make sure come within line of all the sorting. So I'm just following up on it. So thank you.
For sure. Thank you.
Okay, any follow-up questions, Councillor McIver? You're good?
Yes, Your Worship, I'm fine.
Okay. If there's no other questions or comments, I think Terry will hand things over to Gordy.
Yes, Your Worship. Gordy will present on facilities operations and parks.
Thank you, Terry. Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. Start my report with the Civic Center. Last week, excuse me, we had an inspection with the Department of Labor. They have been tasked with doing COVID inspections and enforcement. So they inspected the Civic Center, the arena, and some of our meeting rooms. They were looking at our plans, our protocols, our signage, what we have in place for cleaning, for sanitizing. And they were thoroughly impressed with what we have going on at the Civic Center. Happy to hear that they more or less suggested we were leading the way in the surrounding areas and on the sites that they had visited. So I think we're in the right direction with what we're doing there. Public health has changed some rules and requirements. They're allowing hockey game play again. So as per Nova Scotia Hockey and straight area minor hockey, straight Richmond guidelines, we're back to hockey, although through the same guidelines, we're not allowing parents in the building through the weekdays for practices. They're only allowed in for the games. And there's been new gathering limits brought into place for meetings. Our Canada Summer Job Program, our application went in the last week of January. Pretty similar program to last year, which is not the traditional program, which usually runs from May till September. This one runs from May till January of next year, 2022, and it's open to individuals 15 to 30 years of age, and it's fully funded through the government. So our application was in and received, and we're just waiting to have that processed. The Oceans Innovation Center at Creamery building, NSCC continues to occupy their space. We are more ready than ever on our side. The wheelchair ramp railing was installed last week. It looks really, really nice. As Paula mentioned, our pools are open following the current guidelines, and our fields are, as we know, closed. But I will say that our playground, with the nice weather, our playground is experiencing quite a bit of use until our last heavy snow there. It was being used a lot. The new generator is in place at the fire hall. We're just waiting for the automatic transfer switch to arrive to complete that installation. Should be here sometime this week, we're hoping. And a couple of vent louvers for the shed outside to allow air circulation for that application, and that'll be up and running. And we had an accessibility advisory committee meeting last week. Went over some more documentation from the province and some introductions to community members and stuff like that. And we're going to continue to meet every month, the second Monday of every month, and we'll keep moving forward with that committee. That's my brief report for this month, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Gordy. Any questions for Gordy at this time? I think it's back over to Terry now.
Yes, Your Worship. So the last item under the section is bylaws and policies. So Councilor McDougall will add something here. So the largest the policy that we're working on now is our procedural policy. It is a very long document, and I will send out our latest draft. To start going through that in this session will be a little bit overwhelming. So I would ask council if they'd be prepared to have an additional meeting that will look at the bylaws and policies, and specifically on that agenda would be the procedural policy and code of ethics for council.
Thank you, Terry. Is council in agreement with having a separate meeting to focus primarily on bylaws and policies?
Sure.
Yes, I agree, Your Worship.
Okay, and Councillor McDougall, you said you're agreeable to that?
Sure, yeah, agreed.
Okay. Deputy Mayor McCrory?
Yes, Your Worship, I agree as well.
Okay, Councillor Coyne?
Yes, Your Worship.
Perfect, we're in agreement with that. So is there anything you wanted to cover, or do we want to hand things over to Huey for his policy question?
No, I appreciate that. So I'll poll council, or Melissa will poll council for a date, and we'll send out the available information, and we'll go from there. So thank you to council on that, and I'll hand it over to Councillor McDougall.
Thanks, Your Worship. Thanks, Terry. Through you, Your Worship, I just, while we're doing bylaws and policies, I'm wondering, I was looking through a lot of policies. I mentioned one of them there in Allison's presentation about active transportation policy. I think a lot of our policies are outdated, and this active transportation policy is a new thing. So I think if staff could look at an active transportation policy, and there's a lot of municipalities now having social media policies, guidelines on what can be done and not done on social media. I'm wondering if staff can look at that also, and we could meet on that sometime and look. There's a lot of municipalities. I seen a lot of them throughout the municipalities are putting these new policies in. So I just try to keep updated on everything. Thanks.
Thanks, Councilor McDougall. We can add that to our separate meeting when we focus on bylaws and policies. Okay. Is there anything else, Terry, under CAO reports?
No, Your Worship. I'll just mention that the social media policy is part of the procedural policy, so that'll be dealt with when we deal with that bylaw. The procedural bylaw. And that's it. That's it for CAO reports, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We'll move on now to agenda item 7 under other business. We have the employee memorial plaque, and I'll hand things over to you, Terry. I know that staff was going to do a little bit of work on that.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So staff has done some work on this. We're really trying to, because the mandate we were given is a large one. I think what we talked about is persons who have worked for the town who have passed away. So as we know, that's a pretty large task. Town's been incorporated since 1889, so there's been a lot of employees have passed away since that point in time, and employees were included teachers at one time, and social services people, and so it's a very large task. So we looked at. Staff have looked at ways that we can refine that somewhat in looking at what's a manageable group so that we don't miss former employees on a plaque, and so we looked at that in a couple of ways. First off, we started to prepare some lists of, and I think this probably came to our attention really for Councillor McCoy's attention because of some people who were actively employed and passed away. So we start looking at some names and of those people in the recent past, which is the last 20 years. So we just looked at some names that, and Paula and Aileen and Gordy and I have been working on this. We've been, Aileen's been talking to some former employees as well, trying to sort of nail down employees in the past 20 years who have passed away while employed with us. And we'll pass this on to councillors as well, because I'm sure we'll have input from you as well. But we've talked about Donna McDonald, Jack Warner, and Jim Dorton, Josephine Warner, Julia Cameron, Malcolm McNeil, and I think we're trying to just ascertain when that occurred, and Mike Davenport. So those are employees who were employed with the town and passed away during their employment. The other group that we looked at, which is probably a manageable group as well, and that's a group, and maybe there's a combination of this, is employees basically within the last 20 years who have passed away, but not while employed. So in that list, we've included Alistair McCaskill, Austin Letcher, Butch Reynolds, Dan Willie McDonald, Don Ritchie, Donnie Horton, Dud Langley, Eddie McGinnis, Francis Ryan, Gordon Day, Gregory Ryan, Lloyd Urquhart. We have Paul White, Steve McNeil, Ted Cass, and Wendy Beaton. So those and some of these folks passed away shortly after they left our employee as well. So that's sort of an initial list, and to try to figure out what this plaque will look like, we really had to know how large it is and how we would be able to move forward with that. We did look at, there's been initiatives before, and so there was a plaque created in 2000, and that plaque was created that identified all of the councillors and mayors since incorporation, and that plaque is not really displayed. It's sitting in one of our offices. I just took a picture of it to show that. I think that's an important piece of work as well. And there's room actually on the bottom to sort of kind of from here down to continue that as well from councils from 2000 onward. One of the thoughts for consideration of council is that we would create a space for employees who have passed away, and for our councils, mayor and councils of since incorporation as well. Show that, and we'll be looking at a wall space. Some of the discussions being that wall space would be the area that's outside of the second floor space in the Civic Center. So where we display the persons who have served from our Legion, served in our wars, and some Legion memorabilia there. We thought that may be an appropriate spot. So we'll just leave that for discussion at this point in time. So we're looking at the plaque maybe resembling what's been prepared for council, previous councils, and suggestion that the list of employees include those who have recently passed away, both those who have passed away while employed and those who have passed away in the past 20 years, and that they be shown in an appropriate space, and one of the suggestions being outside the municipal office on the second floor. So I'll leave that for some discussion of council at this point.
Thank you, Terry. So I'd like to open up the floor for some discussion. Perhaps we'll start with Deputy Mayor McCrory, since he brought the idea forward from one of our staff.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just like to say I'm very pleased with the amount of work that has gone into bringing this forward, this information to us tonight. I do appreciate that the number of years and going back to incorporation of the town and looking at identifying all past town employees would be extremely daunting. And I'm understanding then from Mr. Doyle that the suggestion is that we look at a time span of 20 years. And I guess, Terry, if you could just confirm that that's what you're proposing.
That's what we're proposing at this point in time. And so even getting sort of accurate data in that is somewhat difficult. So we want to make sure that the plaque is correct. But yes, Councillor, 20 years is what we're suggesting.
Yeah. And I think the suggestion about the second floor displayed off of the civic office upstairs, I think that is a good suggestion. So anyhow, thank you very much, Terry.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We'll go next to Councillor Coyne.
Through you, Your Worship, I'll echo Blaine's comments of the amount of work that's been done on this already, and it's much appreciated. I, however, have a little bit of a difference of opinion of where this maybe should be displayed, this plaque for our past employees. There's not a lot of traffic, I find, that goes upstairs to the second floor. If we could find somewhere down in the main corridor where we could just proudly display these names and they'd be seen by more people, I think that would do it a little bit more just. But again, that's just my opinion. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Coyne. Councillor McDougall?
No, Your Worship, I agree with Terry, and I also agree with Jason. It's probably better to downstairs. There's room down there where we can display it.
Councillor McIver?
Yes, Your Worship, I agree with Councillor Coyne and Councillor McDougall that maybe it should be downstairs where it'd be more visible, more traffic. Other than that, thank you, Terry.
Thank you. So I guess the concept of kind of starting at the turn of the new century, so from 2000 going forward, and having it displayed somewhere in the Civic Center, I guess is certainly supported by council. So great job on that, on refining the concept. So I guess what would you suggest for next steps, Terry?
So, Your Worship, we're still working on the list, and so we'll refine that, and then we'll come back with a rendering of a plaque of what that exactly will look like. As I mentioned, we'll look at right now the model that we're using is the plaque for past councillors and mayors. So and we'd like to display that with that at the same time, because it's really looked like a really good initiative at the time that we haven't followed through on. So so we'll come back with a rendering, Your Worship.
That sounds great. So council will look forward to any further updates. The next item that we have, I guess you're still on for the next item as well, Terry, is our Economic Development Committee terms of reference, then followed by our Housing Committee terms of reference. So I'll hand things over to you for those two items.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So in your package was included a draft terms of reference for economic development. I won't go through the document in great detail. Just maybe the mandate, so sort of the goals and the mandate are probably the most, I guess is all important, but it really, the mandate really goes to the functioning of what we expect to happen in the committee. So I'll just read maybe both of those. So with respect to economic development, the purpose of the Economic Development Advisory Committee is to assist council in creating an environment that encourages industrial, commercial, and residential development within the town and Strait region. The committee's work will include work with partners in economic development to identify the needs of the current businesses and propose ways to encourage business retention. Identify impediments to development, proposing marketing strategies and initiatives, and identifying potential investment opportunities. So the rest of the document really goes on to the rules at that meetings, where the membership comes from, meetings, roles and responsibility of municipal staff, reporting and communication, conflict of interest, and the method of amending the document. What I'd like to suggest is that the any amendments that council will wish to make from the document at this time, we can do. But what I'd like to do, and what we've done in the past, is taken this draft to the first meeting of the committee and to get their input on how we may want to improve. And there's items there too on, say, frequency of when meetings are held and that type of thing that's important for the existing committee to look at. So what I'd like to see from tonight is comments from councillors, mayor and councillors on improvements to the document, and a commitment that we would move, once that's done, a commitment that we would move this to the first committee of council for the first committee meeting for input from the new members as well.
Thank you, Terry. I think that's a wonderful suggestion. What does council think about that suggestion?
I agree, Your Worship.
I agree, Your Worship.
I agree.
Deputy Mayor?
Yes, I agree for both economic development and housing. Yeah.
Fantastic. So we will work at I guess establishing a first meeting for both of these committees. We'll bring those to the members that we have already approved, and we'll have some input from both council as well as those committee members, and then we can ratify those terms of reference in council at the next public meeting, or the next public meeting, I guess, after that meeting does occur. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay. And our last item under other business is the Strait Richmond Minor Hockey Association, and a letter was circulated. I'll let Terry give a quick review on that.
Yes, Your Worship. So we did circulate the request from the Strait Richmond Minor Hockey Association with respect to some funding requested by council. They're suggesting that due to Port Hawkesbury Paper Tournament not being able to be held, that they're asking the town to support 2 additional weeks of hockey for Strait Richmond minor hockey teams. I will mention that in all of our requests, we've asked for financial statements from the requesting organization. We did receive today some breakdown on what it's going to cost the Strait Richmond Minor Hockey Association to carry out the additional 2 weeks. We haven't received yet their sort of statement from Strait Richmond Minor Hockey Association, sort of their actuals and projection as to where their budget's going to be at the end of the year. We have discussed it. I've discussed this with my counterpart at the County of Richmond as well. I guess there's 2 choices. We can wait for the final for the final financials from the association, or we can have further discussion tonight, or we can make a decision tonight to move forward to the to our public session in March.
Terry, so just the discussions you've had with Don, the CAO of Richmond County, was there any commitment made from Richmond County with regard to this request? Or do you have
Richmond
an
County,
update?
yep, I didn't mean to interrupt, Your Worship. Richmond County, it would appear that their donation will be $350 to the Great Richmond Minor Hockey Association.
Did they put any kind of, did they quantify that with it or qualify that with anything specific, or the
No, I
$350?
just asked the question if they had received the same request and what the intention of their council was. And that's the indication I got back from their CAO, is that the donation from Richmond County would be $350.
Okay, that's good. I guess good information for council to have with regard to this request. Councillor Coyne, you have a comment or question?
I do, through you, Your Worship. To Terry and also to the rest of council, I realize that minor hockey is usually over around the middle of March. We find ourselves in a position this year, by the sounds of things, that our ice is going to be staying in longer for spring hockey. So with minor hockey extending a week or two, it actually works in our benefit. And I would propose that if Richmond County is going to give a $350 donation, we could look at this one of two ways. One, we could match what Richmond County is doing, or two, we could give a different price for the ice for those extended 2 weeks to match the $350, because it's helping us in the long run, taking guaranteed revenue in on the ice, where if minor hockey was finished, we wouldn't necessarily have that revenue. And I think that it helps both us and the Minor Hockey Association.
Thanks for that suggestion, Jason. Any other comments with regard to this request? Councillor McDougall?
No, I have no comments at this time.
Councillor McIver?
No, Your Worship, not at this time.
Okay, Deputy Mayor?
So, Your Worship, the cost to continue with minor hockey for 2 weeks, what is the cost? Is it?
I think the letter quotes 12,000. Is that correct, Terry?
Yeah, no, that's, so I did receive a breakdown just a few hours ago from Straight Richmond Minor Hockey Association, and it was 11,000. And I don't have it right here, but it's yeah, it's between $11,000 and $12,000. So it is a significant amount of money that was required, and it's primarily internal costs, with about $1,000 of officiating.
So sorry, through you, Your Worship, Terry, you were breaking up. I couldn't make out what you last said there.
Sorry about that. So the price is between $11,000 and $12,000. Most of that is made up of ice rental costs, and there's about $1,000 of officiating that's also included. So it's between $11,000 and $12,000. I can't remember what the exact amount is, but yeah, basically around $12,000. So I have asked the association as well, if there were costs that were not that they did not have to realize because of COVID conditions. As the example, the amount of officiating that was paid for this year, because we have had some times when games were suspended, as well as the amount of ice, which appeared to be lower. So they are getting some more information back on that. The vice president did indicate that they actually they felt that they had bought more ice because there was no away tournaments, but some of the officiating costs were down.
So is there a particular ask that they are making of the town? They're looking for us to contribute what we would have contributed if they were hosting the Port Hawkesbury paper tournament.
That's correct, Blaine. Aaron, I believe we normally gave 2,000. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, I can confirm that, Mayor. So we normally gave we had given $2,000 in the past. So they're asking for $2,000 is what they're asking.
And the same request was made of Richmond County as well for 2,000.
Yeah, well, so what their thought is that we have budget and Richmond County has budget in place for supporting the Port Hawkesbury paper tournament, and they would like to. They're asking council to consider utilizing that money that was in budget to support Port Hawkesbury paper tournament for them to be able to extend their season by 2 weeks.
Can I add a comment, Your Worship? So just for information for everybody on council, but more so with the people following online right now, the general public, I've had discussions this week with Terry on this. And when I first read this request and I heard the dollar figure that the town donated every year for the Port Hawkesbury paper tournament, the first thing that popped into my mind is the reason the town would donate this money is because it stimulates the local economy for 9 days. It brings in a lot of people, 11 days, brings in a lot of people. And the answer I got in a nutshell was yes, that it was, the $2,000 was well spent because the town did see the revenue from everybody being in town. And I could buy that 100%. It's an easy pill to swallow. The $2,000 to extend a season for 2 weeks is not an easy pill to swallow. So we pay $520 for registration for minor hockey. And what was relayed to me was if they don't get this, they'll have to come back to the parents for $100 for 2 weeks of hockey, and that math doesn't add up to me either. So that's why I suggested we see what Richmond County was doing, and if it was within reason, we could look at possibly matching it. So I just wanted to give the public a little bit of background information on why the town did the donations in the years past, because I know our phones will be ringing tomorrow asking us why.
Thanks for that, Councillor Coyne. Councillor McIver?
Yes, Your Worship. Through you, Your Worship, to Terry, if I'm correct, you did not receive the financial statements?
Yeah, we received partial financial statements, so we're waiting for the Straight Richmond Minor Hockey Association statements, not just the additional cost breakdown.
Right, and that's usually what we do is get all that information before we make a decision.
Yeah, through you, Your Worship, that's exactly right. We've always asked for financial statements from any organization that's asked us for money.
Thank you, Terry. Your Worship, I don't have any problem with making a donation if they follow our protocol with giving us all the information before we make a decision. Thank you.
That's perfect. So we will take all that. I guess we will wait for the information that comes forward for minor hockey, and our next available discussion will be at the public meeting. So we'll have all the information at our disposal to make that decision. Okay. So is there any other questions or comments on this item before we move on? Okay, so hearing none, thank you, Terry, by the way. Hearing none, we already talked about the approved addition under the CAO report, so we're going to move on to future meetings. So our next public meeting is March 2nd, and our next committee of the whole is March 16th. That's for council's information. And lastly, the moment we've been waiting for, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And do we have a seconder?
Seconded.
Okay, Councillor McIver, thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right.
Contrary minded? Okay, the motion to adjourn is approved. Have a wonderful night, everyone. Thank you.
Have a great night.
Brenda, hey, Mayor, I have a quick question for Terry.